If you're interested in what's going on in Alaska real estate, you doubtlessly would really benefit from hearing about how real estate has changed in the past decade for the entire state, and then for South Central Alaska, looking specifically at Anchorage and the municipality of Anchorage. And that's what we're going to be providing for you today. My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And today we're going to be diving into the market update for what's been happening in the past decade, looking specifically at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market. So this again is going to be the entire 10-year cycle for what's been going on across the state in these different sectors. So we'll kind of dive into a little bit of specifics in a couple instances, and we'll be looking at existing and new construction properties just to kind of give you a well-rounded view for how the real estate is going up here in Alaska. Before we get started though, do make sure you give this video a like, do subscribe if you haven't done so already, and let's go and jump into our special 10-year market update. The first thing we're going to look at is what's going on in the entire state of Alaska with the existing construction residential homes. So looking on the residential side first, we see that back in 2012, the average sold price was actually right around $286,000. This past year, the average sold price was about $340,000. So we do see a bit of an uptick there. The days on market were roughly about 77, and for this past year that we have the most recent data for, it actually does show right around 40 days on market was the average, which, is about what we would expect. So one thing I don't like about this specific graph, for some reason, it didn't give me all the data that we had from the year 2021. But that being the case though, we are seeing a really healthy appreciation of about 8.2%, which is actually an anomaly, because if you can go back 10 years, usually you're going to see like a 0.5% increase or even a bit of a decrease on some years. Just kind of depends on what's going on. Now, keep in mind, this is for the entire state and not just looking at South Central where most of the real estate is, it's looking at all these outlier places as well. But that is your 10-year synopsis for what you're seeing for properties on the residential side just across the entire state. Now, the next thing that we're going to check out is what's going on as far as condos goes across the entire state, looking at that 10-year outlook. Now, what we're seeing is that the average sold price back in 2012 was about $187,000, and now what we're seeing is the average sold price is right around $230,000, and the average days on market back in 2012 was about 67, and now you're sitting much closer to about that 40 to 50 days on the market. So you are seeing, again, this is a much better time to be a condo owner than it has been in previous years. Condos are really not the popular property classification up here in Alaska because people don't really move up here to go live in a condo. They want something with a little bit more space and a little bit more privacy, but people still do buy condos, obviously, and we do build them. So that's a kind of a good outlook for you if you do own a condo and you've been waiting for a while to be able to sell it. This market is probably about as good as it's going to get, as you can see from the past 10 years. Now, the next classification we're going to look at for the entire state are going to be the multifamily properties. Now, the multifamily properties are unique because they do encompass everything from the little duplex all the way up to the big multiplex. But going back to 2012, we see the average sold price for an existing multifamily property was about $338,000, if I recall correctly. And then fast forwarding today, it's right about $483,000. The average days on the market back then was about 79 days on market, and now it's sitting right at about 49. So we are seeing about a 14.5% increase over the previous year for what we saw with the multifamily for the previous year. So that's kind of a healthy sign, and that really is just an indication that the rents for those multifamily properties are going up, and so the prices are going to go up with it. Going back from the past previous years, you do see that there were instances where the multifamily properties actually did go down in value, and that is more just reflective and the rent incomes that we're able to get during those time periods. So rents are up right now, so the value for those properties is obviously going to be on the uptick. The next thing we're going to be looking at is the residential properties for the entire state, looking specifically at the new construction. Now, this is one of the most dramatic classifications we have that's gone up, because back in 2012, average sold price was about $318,000. Now, the average sold price is about $457,000. So that's over the course of 10 years. And obviously there's a lot of inflation, cost of materials, so on and so forth. The past couple of years have been some of the most aggressive increases for appreciation and value for that classification, just because cost of materials has gone up, as has the demand for homes because of the low interest rates. And we do see this also in the average days on market almost being cut in half from what we've seen in times past for new construction, as far as the new construction for the residential. So that's what we're seeing there. That's probably the most aggressive appreciation that we've seen for the entire state for a property classification. Next thing we see is that the value for condos definitely did take an uptick as well. The average sold price for condos back in 2012 was about $273. Now it's about $363 is the average sold price for condos for the entire state that are new. Not only that, but again, the days on market did actually take a pretty sizable cut as well, which just means that there's overall more demand for condos as well. So the next thing we're going to look at is what's going on for across the state for the new construction on multifamily properties. Now, this is interesting because we see that in this group, we have the most swing both up and down for the average sold price. But around this time around this time back in 2012, it was about $379,000 was the average price for a new construction multifamily property. And now you're actually looking much closer to about the $590,000, which, is a pretty sizable increase from the year before, because it actually went from 8.3 to just under 5% of those 2 years worth of appreciation back to back. So you see a really aggressive appreciation there, which is about what we would expect when the rents are up, the cost of materials is high, and interest rates are low. So that's really what you would exceed to see those prices just jump up like that. Let's take a break here real quick. For those of you who've been watching for a while, you do know that I do host the Alaskan Journey podcast, in which I interview people who currently live up here in Alaska about their experience and any tips that they personally have from having come up here to make that a smooth process. So if that's something that would interest you, do make sure you go check that out in the description section down below. And if you'd like a copy of my relocation guide, go to my website, register, and just put relocation guide in the comments section so I know what to send you. So without further ado, let's go and finish today's market update. So narrowing this down a little bit more, looking at Anchorage and the MatSu Valley, we see that the average sold price for existing properties back in 2012 was about $280,000, and now we're sitting roughly at about $390,000. So we are seeing a really aggressive uptick in the overall value for homes in the area, usually about 8 to about 10% increase for the average sold price. Year over year has been the norm lately. So I'm not really expecting that to change anytime soon, but it does kind of give you some historical perspective that appreciating that aggressively is not particularly common for this area. But we do see a pretty healthy appreciation across the board, looking at existing homes in the MatSu Valley and in the municipality of Anchorage. The next thing we see is for condos in Anchorage and the MatSu Valley actually went from about $185,000 went up to about $220,000, which that's a bit of an increase. Not a whole lot though. The fact of the matter is, like I said before, condos are not particularly the go-to property class that everybody likes around here, just because everyone prefers more and more privacy. But for the first time in a while, we're consistently seeing increasing prices for condos in the MatSu Valley and in Anchorage. So that is a good sign. If you own a condo, then now is probably not a bad time to be looking at selling, because historically we do see that there are years where the market value for those actually do go back. So yes, that's good news for you right now. The next thing we need to look at is what's going on for the existing properties for multifamily property in Anchorage and the MatSu Valley. So the average sold price went from about $383,000 to about $490,000. So we do see a pretty aggressive uptick for the value of the properties in the past couple of years. Looking at just the past couple of years, it went from I think it was like about 6% increase, and then this past year, as the cost of rents has really started settling in, it's gone up by nearly 15% for these two market centers. So that's great news. It means that the cost of rents going up, that does increase the overall market value for multifamily properties in these markets. Now, let's go ahead and keep our focus looking at Anchorage and the MatSu Valley, but let's look at the new construction now. So going back to 2012, the average sold price for a new construction home was about $325,000. Now, nowadays, it's about $465,000, if I recall correctly. So you do see in the past couple of years alone, there was about a 7 to 6% average sold price increase in those specific sectors. Now that's significant because obviously cost of materials is going up and everything else is going up. This is one of those market classifications that has consistently been going up. You get a couple of years where it goes back a little bit, and there's probably has more to do with some very specific special circumstances that made that happen, but that's been one of the most consistently performing segments of this market in the past 10 years. Next thing we want to look at is what's going on as far as condos that are new construction, looking at Anchorage and the MatSu Valley. So looking specifically at these markets, we do see that the average sold price went from about $262,000 to roughly about $372,000, $273,000. For new construction condos, we're not seeing a whole lot of change as far as what the value is for these properties, for what they can actually sell. So if you're building new construction condos, historically might not be a great time. Obviously, keep doing what you're doing, make it work, but just know right this minute the payoff just isn't quite going to be there. If you are looking at purchasing one, all fine and good, just don't expect it to really appreciate aggressively anytime soon. Last but not least, new construction multifamily, looking at Anchorage and the MatSu Valley. What we're seeing is the average sold price back in 2012, $379,000. Nowadays, the average sold price for new construction multifamily is about $590,000. So this again is going to be one of those property classes that have performed very, very well. In the past 3 years, the average sold price has gone up about $70,000 on average. So that should give you an idea for just how much of an impact the increase of rents in this market really does have. So this has been your 10-year breakdown for what we've seen across the board. Overall, we are seeing that we are seeing pretty aggressive appreciation of most market classes, and that's probably going to continue going as interest rates do remain historically, perspective-wise, pretty low. Inventory remains low and demand still remains pretty high, and as long as rents continue to go up, the value for these multifamily properties are going to increase as well. So I hope this was useful for you. If it has, make sure you give this video a like, and we'll see you next time.